All right, head into this. The B-BBEE Commission says there's room for improvement when it comes to enterprise and supply development strategies. ESD is part of the overall B-BBEE scorecard and measures contributions to a black-owned business. Now, a study by the Commission has found that only 61% of funds allocated to ESD back in 2021 were used, and the total amount available that year was 26 billion rand. However, another worrying factor is that beneficiary enterprises may need additional support to scale up and remain competitive. So let's speak to Lindiwe Madonsela now. She's the Senior Manager of Compliance at the B-BBEE Commission. Lindiwe, thank you so much for your time. Good morning to you. I think before we get into the contents of the study, let's talk about the whole point of having this study in the first place. What's its significance?
Okay, let's first start by indicating that the legislation has made enterprise and supply development a priority element because it seeks to ensure that we promote the support that is directed towards small businesses, because that is one of the objectives of the B-BBEE legislation, to increase investments towards small and medium-sized entities. So as the B-BBEE Commission, because annually, as of 2017, we've been releasing the National Status and Trends on B-BBEE report. We have noticed that when we look at the spend around enterprise and supply development, entities are more or less spending between 50 and 60% of what is designated. So we then had to look into it deeply and determine what exactly are the hindrances. Why is it that companies are not utilizing 100% of what is designated in each year towards enterprise and supply development? Then that necessitated us conducting this particular research to determine how these funds can be effectively utilized so that we can see the growth and sustainability of small businesses.
Yeah. So speaking of that growth, what have you found just in terms of the funds being allocated for that particular mission to assist in the development and growth of black businesses?
Okay, so what we have found, the study gives us a few indicators. We do find that for the period that the study was conducted and the companies that were engaged or those that responded to the request to participate, we found that there are sectors where 100% of the funds were utilized. For example, in your construction, in your property, in your agri-BE. Then other sectors, the funds were not 100% utilized, such as your ICT, your tourism. And then where also the funds were utilized, or also picking up issues that companies have raised. For example, there are companies that raise the fact that though they make funds available, they don't see the small businesses increasing, or they don't see the growth that they thought will come based on the support that they provided. And they raise a number of issues. They raise issues around lack of skills. They raise issues around poor financial management. So that is why the support is not able to make the necessary impact. And then also we've seen that where mentoring and coaching is made part of what is done to support small businesses, there are positive results because we're helping them to scale up. And the study has also made a recommendation around mentoring and coaching being made mandatory over and above just the financial support that is being directed to grow the small businesses.
Lindiwe, I want to touch on that financial support. I mean, just in terms of the study's revelations, particularly on the resources available for ESD, quite significant, you say, those resources are.
Yes, it is. I mean, when you look at the study shows that majority of the entity, above 70%, they had around 101,000 to about 21 million and above for a particular year that we looked into as part of the study. So that is a significant amount that we thought that if we properly link them up to small businesses, they should be helping the small businesses with challenges that they're encountering, more so as we are trying to also see that these funds are used to alleviate the impact of COVID-19 on small businesses, which were the hardest hit. So we see that there are funds available, but there's the disconnect between the impact that must be seen in terms of how those funds are properly utilized.
Is that why you also, shared this data, the fact that only 61% of those funds were actually implemented? And you say in your report that it seems to be a trend for the past 5 years.
Yes, you're correct. It's been a trend for the past 5 years. And then also what has been worrisome to us as a regulator is that when you engage a lot of small businesses, they will still continue to raise an issue around limited access to finance or not even having access to finance at all. Then when we have the legislation that was amended to specifically cater for supply development and enterprise development, why is it that we are not seeing these funds being utilized? Now, one of the things that we pick up in the study is that though companies may have the funds, you find that some tend to focus more on supply development, others tend to focus more on enterprise development. So there's no collective effort to implement both supply development and enterprise development. And it could be the reason why there's a shortfall in terms of the funds that have been identified for enterprise and supply development.
Yeah, and then that brings us then to some of the recommendations that you have also made. And I know that amongst others, besides obviously to further develop a long-term approach to ESD and for senior managers to commit to its resiliation. But I understand that you want government to reinforce its commitment to BBEE and how it's implemented.
Yes, correct. The reason is because when you look at the BBBEE legislation, it applies both in the private sector as well as in the public sector, meaning that when you talk about enterprise and supply development, even organs of state and public entities are required to commit and implement the element. The element has three parts: preferential procurement, supply development, and enterprise development. So they need to implement all. We've seen that the strength is around making available procurement opportunities, but there's still more to be done in terms of making sure that funds are made available for supply development and enterprise development in a form of either financial support or non-financial support, because the legislation provides for such. So for organs of state and public entities, those that do not generate revenue, they are required for supply development to spend 0.2% of allocated budget annually. And then for enterprise development, 0.1% of allocated budget annually. So we have seen that there has been a gap in terms of that being done. Then that is why one of the recommendations is to reinforce our commitments towards supporting small businesses through this particular funds.
Well, Lindiwe, I appreciate you speaking to us about this morning, and I would encourage all South Africans to actually read the study and go through, of course, the data that you've shared, but also the recommendations that you have shared, so that if you are a BEE compliant company, if you are a black-owned business, a small medium enterprise, a government official, we can work together, of course, alongside the BBBEE Commission in making sure that some of your recommendations are achieved. But thank you so much for making your time for us. Lindiwe Madonsela, Senior Manager for Compliance at the BBBEE Commission, joining us this morning.